restricted breath, croup in small children, or anxious breathing are all symptoms that bring to mind lithy gemmotherapy for me. I'm Lauren Hubele. I'm a health educator and a gemmotherapy expert. And I'm here today with two of my friends and colleagues to talk about lithy gemmotherapy and lithy the tree, well, or the shrub, I guess. So Teri's an herbalist and she will introduce herself.
Hi, Megan. Hi, Lauren. Everybody that's with us, pleased to be here today on this beautiful spring day. I'm Teri Brooks. I'm an herbalist. I'm in Minnesota, where summer is not here, but spring is advancing. Let's put it that way.
And I hope you can clear up whether it's a tree or a shrub for us shortly, Teri.
Right.
And Megan, so good to have you with us today.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Lauren and Teri. It's great to be with you again. My name is Maegan Lemp, and I practice Japanese acupuncture and bodywork, hospice acupuncture, and gemmotherapy.
Beautiful. So I feel so fortunate to be here with these two brilliant minds to talk about lithy. We're going to start looking at it first as a plant. Teri, what are you going to tell us about lithy?
Well, lithy's Latin name is Viburnum lantana, and I would say it's a large, rounded shaped shrub, growing about 5 to 10 feet tall, maybe similar to some lilac trees, about that height. In most locations, it's native to Europe and Asia, and it grows in zones 4 through 8 here in the US. It likes full sun to partial shade, and it has very interesting leaves. I was able to pluck one that has just, I don't know if you can see this. The leaves are kind of leathery and very textured with deep, deep veins.
Oh, wow.
Maybe you can see.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, it has a lot of texture to the leaves. And then you'll see, though the leaves are opposite, it'll have the blossom right in the middle. And it looks like this most of the winter. Of course, these leaves are tiny then, but you can see that there's going to be a bud of something in the winter or in the middle of that. So it's interesting that even in Minnesota, it is quite interesting throughout the winter. It looks very similar, just much smaller. These white clusters will eventually turn into some berries, which progress through the colors of yellow, red, and eventually turning black. And another thing that's interesting about it is it can have all colors on the same cluster at a time. So it progresses through that whole thing. The fruit may be toxic in large quantities. I don't think it's going to kill you, but you might have a bad tummy ache. It's usually a non-fragrant plant, and it tolerates most soil types except for standing water. And we also know that it is not pollution tolerant. So it's not a plant that they would plant in order to suck the pollution out of the air. It wouldn't tolerate that. But it does attract many insect pollinators and bird species. And here it's considered an ornamental, and in some cases it's considered very invasive. I only have one tree, one shrub. It's never even suckered for me yet. So I haven't had the opportunity to see if it's invasive or not, but you know, it might be something worth, because it is a valuable gemmo, it might be something worth trying to propagate.
Oh, absolutely. Please do, Teri. When you were looking into this shrub, did you find any historical evidence or folklore that would be interesting here?
Well, this is a shrub that does have some historical uses way back, but doesn't seem to be a lot of mythology about it. It's often called the wayfaring plant, and I think in some gemmo books it's referred to that way because in Great Britain it grew close to paths, it grew along the edges of woods and kind of like a partial hedge along the woods. So wayfaring, it's along their way, they happen to see it. The branches of this plant are quite strong but very flexible, and they were once used almost as string to tie hay bales together, which, you know, strong and flexible doesn't always go together. So I think that's pretty interesting. And the other thing I found about it was, you may have heard of this human skeleton called Otzi, who was found. He was a Copper Age hunter His body was found in 1991 in the Alps between Austria and Italy. And he was judged to have lived around 3,400 BCE. He still had a quiver full of long, straight arrows that were rigid, and they were analyzed to be from this Lithy shrub. So that we know that the use goes quite a long ways back.
Wow, interesting. And are there clues by looking at the plant or studying it in any way that would tell us about its medicinal use?
Well, you know, I'm very curious about the leaves because of the texture on it. I don't know what to make of that, because right now they're almost shimmering gold with texture. And maybe we'll have some brilliant discovery or thought about that later. But that interests me a lot. And the fact that it's so flexible and strong also is quite interesting. Right now, there is a lot of research going on, being conducted on this shrub around the world. And what I've learned is that based on the known chemical constituents and the physiological actions of those, these properties we know it has. It is a plant that has antihistamine qualities, antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, anti-tumor, antimicrobial, antiviral, and it has free radical scavenging properties. If you take all of those known properties together, we can see that it would affect the pulmonary system. It will alleviate bronchial spasms, cough, allergies, helps with COPD. It influences immunity. It enhances natural killer cell activity. And it fights against quite a lot of bacteria that are common, like E. coli, streptococcus, staphylococcus, and so on. It improves joint mobility and it protects cartilage. That's that strong and flexible part of it, I think, where it comes in. It could be used in arthritis and periodontitis. It helps with detoxification. It helps the nervous system, reducing anxiety and depression. It has some cardiovascular effects. Some are saying it is a blood pressure regulator. So again, that adaptive quality, if you need a higher blood pressure, it raises it. If you need lower blood pressure, it would lower it. Integumentary system is the skin and the coverings of our body. So it will be something that could heal the skin tissues and heals wounds. It also has some antispasmodic qualities. And some of the very current research is being done on trials for melanoma, lung, gastric, and nasopharyngeal cancers. So we know this plant warrants a lot more research. And when we come to something like this, I often have people ask me as an herbalist, well, how can one plant do all of that? And I am of the view that holism is the best way to go, vitalism and holism. So once a plant is decided that they're going to make a somewhat pharmaceutical preparation out of it, and that, by the way, in my opinion, includes some of the herbal supplements that are made, they will take one or two known chemicals, standardize it so they can exactly tell you how many milligrams or whatever of that. And that, I think, makes them more toxic and dangerous because we don't have the synergy any longer of all those chemicals working together. And this is why gemmotherapy is such a beautiful remedy, because it does. Those meristem cells have all of those qualities and it can address all of those issues in our body.
Wow. Well, I happen to agree with you, Teri.
Thought you might.
I do. On that point, and then so much more, I love what you were saying about the strong yet flexible. That really resonates with me when I think about this as an extract. And also, it makes me consider what it offers people on the emotional level too, which I wouldn't be surprised if you tap into as well, Maegan. So gemmotherapy, Lithy extract from the buds or from the shoot, Teri? From the buds of the shrub. The primary action is as a harmonizer on the respiratory system, dilating the bronchi to ease inspiration and expiration. So when we think about this strength with flexibility, I mean, what more could we want for our lungs, right? I mean, that's beautiful. And then it has a harmonizing action on the autonomic nervous system, particularly the brain and lung connection, so that it improves the communication between the brain and the lungs, so we don't get false messages that could cause a respiratory reaction that isn't necessary or needed. We know that Lithy is able to harmonize these allergic reactions that would lead to bronchial spasms. It also harmonizes the contraction and relaxation of smooth muscle cells. Again, flexibility and strength right there repeated for us. There's another brain connection with Lithy that we have, the brain-ear connection, and Lithy has been known to improve hearing loss that is caused by poor communication between the brain and the ear. So if it's a nervous system issue, and I would say, you know, if the hearing is still intact there, we can help rejuvenate that with Lithy. There is a secondary action to Lithy with the thyroid. And although I would say right here in Gemmotherapy, we rarely work on the thyroid as a separate entity. The thyroid is part of the endocrine system. It has a direct response with the health of the adrenal gland. So anyone listening that has thyroid issues, this wouldn't be where I would jump in. And I would also say your response probably wouldn't be favorable. But as we're working holistically, as you're talking, Teri, with the whole body, just like you're advising using the whole plant, we would eventually see some improvement to the thyroid with using Lithy, and to the central nervous system as a harmonizer. Lithy has a lovely calming effect on the body. And in these days particular, it could be very useful for many people. We might use it for all ages and all genders at any time that there's physical or emotional lung-related symptoms. And I have seen it work beautifully with young children having asthmatic symptoms, so that they either never need to use an inhaler or a nebulizer, or they're able to get off of them. And it actually changes the function and reminds the lungs of how they're meant to operate. When we have acute symptoms involving the lung and bronchi, Lithy is an excellent extract to consider, and it's often paired with blackcurrant in those incidences. And then we use Lithy in microdoses to harmonize the central and autonomic nervous system, resolving anxious breathing and improving sleep between the hours of 3 to 5 a.m. And currently, that's become a very common symptom now in folks dealing with all the, I don't even want to say aftermath yet of this COVID virus, but the repercussions, I guess. And we have a lot of 3 to 5 waking going on, and Lithy in microdoses, and Lithy is very powerful. So 1 drop of Lithy is really plenty. In chronic cases, people with chronic asthma, chronic bronchitis, any cough requiring bronchial dilation, we can certainly consider Lithy. It's been a very active ingredient in protocols for those who are dealing with COVID symptoms. So that's what I have to say about Lithy from the Gemmotherapy extract. From the Asian medicine lens, Megan, what can you add to that?
Yeah, again, Teri, I was so touched by what you said about strong and flexible, because that I do think that really does speak to this as an extract. Lithy supports both the lung and secondarily what we call the kidney energy as it relates to respiration. So the lung energy is sometimes referred to as the delicate organ. And that, again, it's not because it is delicate, but it's because it's our most external layer and forms our outermost shell that encounters the external environment. And so it therefore tends to take a hit. And it's often the first one affected by the external environment. So we see lung issues in a wide variety of cases. As Lauren was saying, we see all ages needing lithy during all seasons. Lithy can be applicable. And together, the lungs and the kidney oversee the breath. And their relationship is very much at play in upper respiratory challenges. Lungs' nature and its energy is to descend, but it relies on the kidney's ability to grasp and ground in order to do that successfully. So there again, we see, lungs sort of has this flexibility, but it really needs that strength and that grounding of kidney. So if kidney is weak, it makes lungs' job a lot harder. And you'll see the breath maybe become shallow and some coughing is more likely to set in. There is an aspect of lithy that facilitates communication. And there are now studies that show that our breath is an important point of connection between the body and the mind, facilitating inner communication. So when we raise or lower our rates of respiration, we're activating different parts of the brain and bringing ourselves into different states of mind. In fact, I read an article recently that referred to the breath as the remote control for the brain. And I think it's interesting because this remote control works both ways, right? How our respiration affects the brain and our brain affects respiration. And we really see this in the way that lithy can calm anxious breathing and can ease grief or anxious thoughts. In fact, lung has the nickname of the master of qi, and this is because of its ability not only to produce qi, but to disperse it and to spread it around and communicate with the rest of the internal organs. And that includes the brain. So lithy has an ability to improve internal communication. Maybe that's why this extract seems to help us get a little bit more in touch with ourselves and sometimes give words to what we may be ready to process and release. So again, lithy brings ease to the breath. It facilitates both internal and external communication, and it really harmonizes our downward flow.
Maegan, that was beautiful, and you reminded me of a really important thing that we have discovered about lithy is its ability to exactly give words to old emotions, particularly that of grief. And we've seen that time and again that we may be using it on a microdose for just anxiety, right? But someone's able to get in touch with what's really beneath that. Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you. So Maegan, if someone wants to learn more about Asian medicine, where would you direct them?
Yeah, so there's a great book, The Web That Has No Weaver by Ted Kapchuk, that you can read to learn about the beginning of Asian medical philosophy. If you're interested in learning more about my practice or gemmotherapy through an Asian lens, you can visit my website at acupuncturist.com.
Thanks, Maegan. And Teri, what do you have for us on trees today?
It would really make me excited if people would just go outside, take a child with you if you can, or borrow a child, and maybe today, just because of this tree, see if you can find 5 different leaves that have different shapes and textures. Look at the texture, feel them. Use all of your senses, smell it. Well, maybe you don't want to taste it, but a little nibble probably isn't going to hurt of anything. But anyway, I think that would be a grand experiment for people to do today.
Oh, that's beautiful. I'm going to take you up on that, Teri.
So.
And if you'd love to hear more about gemmotherapy, which I so hope you do, please take a look at all of our podcasts and YouTube videos. Come on over to my website. I've got plenty of material there for you to read through, and I'd love to have you join one of my classes. So thank you for joining us today, and excuse me, we look forward to hearing from you again.